Okay, this is the March 30th meeting of the Dog Park Committee. A change in day from Wednesday to Thursday by the lack of room space for us. I think I should tell you first because if I don't tell you first, I'll forget. You gave me two tasks to find answers to at the last meeting. One was when 2 weeks after we have our public meeting, might we have a meeting in the selectmen's room? Either the public meeting or the meeting for selectmen. The public meeting is tentatively scheduled for Thursday, April 27th. That is the first date that larger room is going to be not occupied.
At 6?
Well, we haven't set a date yet, and I think we'll do that later.
Okay.
I think that it will be available at any time we want it.
22nd is a
Yeah,
Saturday.
it's a Thursday.
Thursday the
27th.
27th.
Oh, 27th, thanks.
And secondly, we were not absolutely certain, I wasn't, I blame myself for this, certain about our statement that there would be annual user fees that would be devoted to the long-term maintenance or long-term care of the park. And when I mentioned this to the town manager, she said that while we hadn't discussed it, it had been discussed in her meetings with the Fur Friends, and that they had agreed that probably there would be some sort of annual fee. So we can use that as a statement, although there is no amount that has been determined as yet, and that is something that will have to be worked out by them. It wouldn't be up to us to set an amount anyways. It's one of the rules, and evidently those rules are going to be written in conjunction with town officials and Fur Friends. And that's, I think, what I was supposed to get the answers to, so there they are.
Now, is Julie attending this meeting?
No, she has sent the material that is in front of you.
Oh, you didn't sit in one of the places with the material.
Okay. And if you'd like, we can, since we don't have minutes to approve, we can talk about those first, and maybe we should, because it may color somewhat what we do on the material that we're going to prepare for our outreach. When I talked with Julie after the last meeting, I said, I think we're almost done, Julie. She agrees with us. If you read the task list, you'll see there aren't many more tasks for the Dog Park Committee to do. But she reminded me that there are going to be quite a few tasks that don't involve our committee, but need to be accomplished before the dog park is finalized. And so she has this list of 28 tasks that she has, or that she theorizes need to be done. And she has put tentative timelines to them all, to all 28. Like our own tasks, it may not take the full length of time to accomplish this, and I hope that it doesn't. I think she's been careful not to underestimate the amount of time. Some of these may be overestimated in terms of the amount of time. But if you look at them, you'll see Dog Park Committee is formed, initiates meetings, the Dog Park Committee evaluates potential sites, including a public meeting for abutters of a final site under consideration. The Dog Park Committee works with town administration to develop preliminary estimated budget for the preferred location. And she has said, once again, similar to as the engineers said, that cost estimates for this first step probably would depend a great deal on square foot costs as determined by similar parks that have been constructed under the Stanton Foundation grants in Massachusetts. And based on those, they believe that we're looking at an estimated square foot cost of about $8 a square foot, which would be about $240,000 total for a 30,000 square foot dog park, which they believe is the size that could be developed and fenced in at Lemansky. Estimates of cost of annual maintenance, well, that probably is beyond us. We know that the area is maintained by the Parks Commission at present. How much this would add to their workload, I'm not sure, but may come with a meeting with them. She also suggested, and it doesn't appear here, that perhaps we should meet with Parks Commission and with the Open Space Committee, just to give them a heads up on what we're thinking and see if they agree or have problems with what it is we're proposing. And finally, they're asking that we conduct some sort of neighborhood outreach and public meeting in the area or areas under consideration. And that's what we worked on last week, and that's what we thought we would do. Having completed all those, we would have as a final task, task number 5, which is a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen for the preferred site with the estimated basic costs, which he says probably best developed using that square foot cost that other dog parks have experienced. And then going on, she sees tasks for the Board of Selectmen, she sees tasks for the Friends, for the Fur Friends, and the Friends promise to cover 10% of the estimated construction costs. This brings us, I think, to where there can be delay, but not the responsibility of this committee. This committee can't do really anything in terms of reaching a satisfactory agreement between the Fur Friends and the town officials. Hopefully, Fur Friends can give something in writing to Julie, to the Board of Selectmen, to the Finance Committee, to whoever the town officials deem necessary to provide them with the assurance that the Fur Friends will complete their promise to match 10% of the construction grant. And you'll see that if you look at green sheet, maybe I should have you call these up.
So I guess what I'd like to ask, and I don't know if you know this, Chair, and when I put together the little Rubik's Cube we got going on here, I interpreted to say that in order for us to basically, from where we are right now, to get to a point where we've submitted the design documents for the foundation for review, that could be happening in June of 2018.
It could. Worst case scenario.
Which
Could. But, or even later, it could be happening not at all if the other steps in between that step and where we are now aren't completed.
Yeah, I guess I know it's not to the fault of anyone here, but I think it should be noted that when I don't know if anyone came into this on day one with the notion that we would be submitting applications, for design, over a year and a half from where we started. And I think that's, if this is in fact true, and again, I'm putting this all together, I do this for a living, and this is a little bit different than how I would put this together, but in any event, if I'm interpreting it correctly, I'm seeing that, June 18th is when, June of 2018 is when we're submitting design documents. And that's just for that. I mean, all the other stuff in terms of construction and things of that sort, go beyond that even. So I think it should be noted, I mean, we weren't giving any type of visibility that this was the journey that potentially this could have taken. And quite frankly, I don't know if some of you would have done the same thing, but I may have thought differently about, the involvement in this committee, because I felt it didn't really give us any visibility that this could be what we're looking at. And with the hours we put into date, to find out that this is more or less what the picture is, I think it's unacceptable, quite frankly. So I could put those in the middle. You can say that Jim McGill said it, unacceptable, to not give us any type of, in the way that where they were and where, how this, I don't know if everybody feels the same, but I just kind of feel like we weren't given good guidance and good expectations around what this could potentially unfold to be. And we've been meeting, and there's been meeting minutes that's been going on, and we've been getting closer and closer to doing a presentation to the Board of Selectmen, and all of a sudden I kind of feel like the rug was pulled out from underneath us.
To echo what you're saying, Jim, I would add the word completely unacceptable to your statement of unacceptable. And I really feel, through no fault of the chair or anyone on this committee, that the sense of transparency that was promised to us at our first meeting with town administration has not occurred. I feel that what we are looking at is first and foremost not consistent with what we were told. Secondly, I doubt is consistent with the framework that accompanies any other project submitted to this town. I really can't think of another endeavor that is being held to this level of such scrutiny, and that causes me to question why. And third of all, the timing. Certainly individuals are aware of what our progress has been, and that for this to occur simultaneously with Mr. Prouty requesting a date for the Board of Selectmen is ironic. But also it makes me wonder what would have occurred had we appeared before the Board of Selectmen. And it causes me to think if this committee has any opportunity at succeeding. Because if when we complete this level of tasks, what roadblocks will be placed before us at that point?
And to throw one more piece of not so good news on this, so if we're saying that we're going to submit documents for design review, again, using this little color-coded stuff here, in June of 2018, and we know that there is now a competitive process with respect to timing with grants, there's no guarantee that in June of next year that we would potentially be able to get a funding for a dog park in that park, and at that point, we could be into 2019.
Can I just ask a question? Is this a suggestion, or is this an automatic thing that we will need to follow?
No, I think it's an estimate.
Okay.
It's
Because-
not a suggestion that we follow it.
Right.
The steps themselves, I think, are pretty much, and I hate to use that word, but I will use it, are pretty much routine as far as town projects go. I think that there are potential obstacles that aren't within our control. Most of those steps have nothing to do with us. And it will depend on the people who are asked to perform those steps and their sense of expediency on when the final thing will be. We have a good example for that. We just had a nomination by one president of a Supreme Court justice and the Congress who said, we're not going to act on that. Well, we have an election in 2 months. If members of the Board of Selectmen say, we're not going to act on this until after the election, it should be the new selectmen who decide whether this is a fit location and this is a fit expense. That makes all of the steps involving the Board of Selectmen take longer than this chart would show. If a majority of the Board of Selectmen says, hey, this is taking too long, let's get it done, we owe these people action, it could be done several months sooner. There's room to expand or contract the time that it will take to do these tasks.
I would agree that there's always that. I guess, and again, I'm not going to get too fired up on this yet. I'm going to hope that maybe there's some errors in this, but I would think, one thing I did it was go through all the videos that had anything to do with dog parks. And I guess, when I see this and I go back to comments that the chairman of the selectmen said that, let's get going on this. Time is money. Well, time is money, and this is the
And
approach
this
we're
is the
using.
approach.
We're beyond broke.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Beyond broke. And so I think we need some clarification on this as quickly as possible, because in my mind, this impacts everything that we're doing right now.
Well, what it comes down to is they're asking us to meet so we can just present, and then this is just unacceptable, because why are we doing this so fast so that we can wait a year?
In fact,
That's ridiculous. It's actually
Sorry.
ridiculous. It's bull crap is what it is.
So
To-
we're
to-
not
to
gonna
do
get
this.
anything done complaining to each other. because
No,
we
I
all
know, I'm
agree.
just saying.
I think we need to see if we can get a meeting with Julie to talk about the schedule.
Yeah.
Because, like I said, we're not gonna get anything done just complaining to each other about it.
Having said that, I agree with your point. I do think it needs to be stated for the record, our position.
Yeah,
Because
each
one
one of
of the
Oh, yeah.
primary arguments that shot down, you were at the meeting, I saw you in the crowd when we were reviewing the selectmen tapes, was that there is no community interest.
Yeah.
And while it's our role to be impartial and the words are independent thinkers, according to a member of the Board of Selectmen, we reflect public interest, and many people have brought their concerns and questions to us. And there clearly is interest, and there is $250,000 on the line that we're throwing that opportunity out the window. And I think it almost shows a level of disrespect to us as a committee to set priorities backed up with emails saying accomplish these tasks thoroughly yet expeditiously, and then to put us on hold indefinitely. If you look at the
I would
hours.
also add that it's a timely $250,000 that we're looking at.
Correct, because,
Okay.
you know,
That money could be gone if we drag our
exactly, because if
feet.
this drags on too long, we may not even
We
get this
not, we
grant.
may not have that. And then the 10% won't mean anything.
So you say we wanna show public interest?
If you can put,
Can you give me the
yeah,
keyboard?
there is on there,
Do
I
we have
think,
CDs on?
in Google Slides,
Thank you.
the whole thing. When you print it on paper, it's too small to
That
read,
should be
Can you,
in.
for
but
just
that
put it
should
in
be
the
in
chat?
Google Slides. I didn't do it.
So while we're waiting for the computer,
Can you send that to me? Can you flip that down there?
you say you want to show public interest. So I say we concentrate our efforts
Oh, boy,
on this meeting, the public meeting.
waste of time.
Yeah,
Let me
Which
throw
I know
out
is like a month
strategic
away.
issue. I'm wary that now, if we hold that public meeting, and we're being told to jump through hurdle of meet with Open Space Committee and Parks Department, did I get that right? That what happens if they tell us something different? And we're creating a record of inconsistency. And I think it also makes us look bad.
Okay.
It makes us be perceived as without obscenity, Elise, we do not have what, I can't do it. That we do not appear proficient and fluent in the task that we've
Okay.
been given to do.
That's
How
fair.
is that? Y'all know what I was
perfect.
really thinking.
Yes.
I
yes.
believe public interest has already been shown. This project is not new. This
No.
project has been going on for a long time. And concerning public interest, I would like to also remind everybody that the Fur Friends had a timeline on this, a deadline, for next year. So with this being possible with that group, and I want to talk more about that group because their offer to create the funds and for the last 10% was contingent upon site approval. They are asking the Fur Friends group, according to this timeline, to spend $700 and become a nonprofit, I believe that's how much it costs, group, first, raise all the funds first, and then apply for the grant. And I think that is absolutely
Because they won't know how much to
ridiculous.
raise.
And I would like also to add, applying for the grant does not cost the town anything. So,
Well, it's just, it would cost the investment of resources
Okay,
to
fair
go through
enough.
the process, but.
sure, fair enough. But with the town being, administration being the ones who initiated this entire thing, I know that they're familiar with the process and with the grant writing and with a lot of the assessments have been made. I know they're very early and I know their estimates and whatnot, but they are, administration or whoever's going to write this grant is familiar with the Stanton grant. They're the ones who made us aware of the Stanton grant. So applying for the grant would be my recommendation for this group to ask for approval of first. And applying for the grant, and I understand, I agree, Mr. Chair, that that puts us in the hands of those who have to write the grant, but I believe everything, as everyone's mentioned, rides on whether or not we get this grant. So why would we do all of this work? We've already done so much work.
Right.
Why would the Fur Friends spend $700 to become a nonprofit for a project that may never happen? I think that is so unfair
Yeah.
for all that they are willing to offer for this
Absolutely.
park, from weekly cleanings to maintaining the park to contributing up to $25,000 potentially for this park to happen, to
Right.
turn around and expect them to raise that money first. I think it's just simply unfair.
So to that point, I won't disagree with you, anything that you say. I think what one of the key missing elements to everything is that there's no integrated plan at this point that has been thumbs up or thumbs down by the different stakeholders that are involved in the process. And at this point, that is the town, and that is Fur Friends. And to let maybe we're a piece of it to a certain degree, but in terms of the go forwardness, that's what's is required, is those groups working together and coming to common ground. And I don't know if that's happened recently or there's a hesitation to do that. What I do know is, in order for us to be successful, it must happen.
Agreed.
It must happen, so that if there's dependencies and concerns and risks on both sides of the table, that is only going to go away or get minimized or changed through productive dialogue and discussion. It is not going to go away by wishing and hoping and not communicating. So before and I think that's critically important, because we need a plan irregardless. Now, whether it's Lemansky Park or a different site, you still need a plan, and maybe at this point we don't need every I dotted and every T crossed, but we need to agree to a framework, a kind of a set of guiding principles, a set of high-level tasks. You need to do this before I can do this, and have that type of dialogue. Because if we don't, we're not going to get there. And I think that's that's a huge piece. It more or less, to me, is one of there's a few things I think are kind of like prerequisite to doing any of this.
Right.
Right? This to me is shooting the effort in the foot. If we send this out now, with so many variables that are in flight right now.
I'm so glad I spent about 15 hours on that
So what can we do to that point?
Right.
How do we broker, I mean, that type of discussion? Is that, Julie calling Nancy, Nancy calling, Julie? Is that just setting up like a workshop type of a meeting?
That's a good question.
That's a key element. Because, because if I'm the Board of Selectmen, and I'm sitting on the fence of approving this, and, I'd like to say, oh, so where are we going from here? What's the next steps?
Now it's,
So right now, it's loosey goosey. I wouldn't approve it.
No.
I think I agree with you. I think there needs to be some type of congruency between those two entities. And at this point, there is a huge difference, a divide in the expectations that each has for
Right.
the other. And I feel that the town has far more resources than a fledgling nonprofit. And while not fledgling in skill, fledgling in age. And I think that the Fur Friends even went as far to say in the letter that they had sent to this committee in January-ish, that they were not intending to apply for the 501c3 status until an application had been submitted.
correct.
Because otherwise they were throwing essentially $1,000 out the window.
Correct, yep.
So,
And I think they get confused occasionally on the fact that there are two separate applications that have to be submitted.
Exactly.
And the first preliminary one, but I will say this, the selectmen back in December were ready to commit to a site. It just
Absolutely.
wasn't a popular enough site for them to commit to. And at that point, they had no more assurance from Fur Friends than they do now. They took the Fur Friends at their word, and, I think that there has to be a matter of trust involved in that. But you're right, there is no great deal of cost to the town in that first
My
application.
concern.
right.
There is, of course, an investment, but it's employees performing routine tasks.
Yeah, it's.
I mean, we're not expecting them to
man-hours.
go above and beyond their
Right.
usual job performance, which many of them excel at.
Right.
And I mean, many years ago, I wrote a lot of grants. I'm not comparing that to this, but I am saying that many parts of a grant application are standard. If you've written one for an organization, you've written the majority. And of course, there is a degree of specificity required, but I'm going to say the vast majority is language that the town likely already has. And I have to wonder if a lot of it hasn't already been done because they were ready to go in December.
Well, I would say you would hope so, but when I see this, it conflicts with what you're saying.
Well, I'm saying hope. I
I
have
don't
no
understand.
knowledge.
Well, it conflicts with the hope.
Yeah.
But I'm a hopes and dreams kind of person. But but how about, let me validate that with, it directly conflicts with what was articulated by the selectmen at multiple meetings,
So
to give you fact.
we need a solution for the next step.
Okay,
We need a next step.
So here's what I would suggest. I think we've got 3 buckets that we can look at that are related, but we can make the decision that they can go in parallel and move forward. We need to, number one priority is we need to bring, I was going to say Hatfields and McCoys, but I don't know that for sure. Two groups that haven't maybe talked recently, need to get together, and we need to kind of go through, I think it would be an educational process for the committee, as well as for our friends to say, okay, well, how did you get to this? What's behind the covers a little bit, and then for our friends to kind of give their sense of, okay, well, here's how we operate. Because one thing, that I didn't see with respect to the Fur Friends is, and again, I'm only speaking for someone who knew nothing about the existence of Fur Friends until we came to this committee, and I have to think there's probably several residents, in town that don't know that. I know they're passionate about dogs, and I know they're pro dog parks, right? But, you know, in terms of how many people there are, you know, what's the experience with fundraising or past successes, you know, what are they all about a little bit more, like a profile of the group, one slide type of thing. I think a lot of the information that Fur Friends presented and back in September, November seemed to be more like, this is a dog park, here's why it's good. And I kind of felt from both sides of the fence, people who were for a dog park and people who were opposing, it was very opinionated based comments, right? There was only one source of data that I saw between the both sides of the table. And I think, you know, that will go into my other bucket. So I think we've got to get those people moving quickly. And if they're not going to work together, then I would ask that we ask them to show us some professional courtesy and say, if you guys can't work together, then let us know, because I have other things to do with my time, as I'm sure everyone else around this table does. So I think that's a critical next step. With respect to the, you know, the community, you know, my second bucket, you know, this piece here, I think there's a couple things that we can continue to do here. I think, you know, I know dates are the moving thing here, but I think what we should do is have one slide that details out, here's all the steps of how we're going to do this. So that means if we're going to, you know, stop at the vets, stop at Petco, we're going to post it to a website, we're going to send a tweet, you know, we're going to do it on Facebook. We list it all out because some of the concerns or perceptions of some of the folks who attended these past meetings were, I didn't know. Well, we're going to give them more options to know than they don't know, and if they want to see how it all came together, here's one slide of the timeline. So, you know, we don't have to put in the dates right now, but whatever you think is a logical sequence of saying, okay, here's where we're going to do the initial blast, and then probably, you know, certainly from like a social media standpoint, you could do like a reminder of next round, you know, on Facebook. I think we absolutely have to do that. We can continue to wordsmith this and get this done. The one thing that I will throw out here, right, because you just mentioned a key word, trust. And what I thought was, you know, a big concern of a lot of the people that came in these rooms before us. The one thing that this doesn't call out, and I don't believe it's by design, I think it's just, we haven't talked about it, is the skateboard park, right? So if I'm somebody who reads this, I'm like, oh, this all sounds good. And then all of a sudden, maybe I don't get involved. I'm like, what? The skate park's being moved, or it's not going to be accessible? I mean, what? So I think what we need to say is that it's, you know, at least make a remark, a bullet, not a, you know, a 12 thing, if you all agree. I think we need to just call out, it's under consideration to move the skate park and just have that out there. So that's kind of where I think we can continue to work on that bucket, you know, if we so choose. The third bucket is continue to refine the deck. I posted a bunch of different data sources. I plugged into some real estate friends that I have, and I posted a folder on your shared drive, my Google shared drive. There's some stuff. There's also in that dog park data sources a bunch of different links. There's one from Trulia that was pretty good, and Trulia is a big, you know, big real estate, you know, type of thing. Because getting back to my point, I don't think that whether you're for or against the dog park, you're going to have this nice, you know, well-bounded book that has data sources for everything underneath the sun. I think the reality is it doesn't exist in the level of maturity in multiple places. But that said, there are some pieces of data out there. So I think we could, you know, we could divvy up, you know, let's go through there, let's pull out a couple of statements, and then where can we put some data sources into the deck, right? Because I think, you know, some of the comments that, you know, I don't know if any of you are aware of this, but I wasn't aware of this until I watched the videos. There was not this, you know, there was a little contention on the Board of Selectmen as to how people on the board were going to, how the people on this board were going to get selected, right? And, you know, we need experts or independent thinkers or all this other, you know, stuff. But I think if I'm sitting in that person's, you know, spot or persons, we need to give them a little bit more than what they've already gotten. And to me, it's by trying to provide a little bit more education and awareness through some data into our presentation to say, you know what, we did our homework. You know, we thought we wanted a dog park, you know, 4 months ago. We now know that we even wanted more because here are the additional benefits type of stuff. So I believe we can continue to, you know, make some refinements on that path so that, you know, we're not kind of working linear here. right? We're doing concurrently. We got people just continue to doing some stuff on this. We can continue to work on the deck, and then we've got to really hope and pray that the forces come together, and we got to understand what their output is. Because if we don't, then it makes no sense to me to put a presentation in front of a board of selectmen. It makes no sense to, burn cycles and some people in the town may already have a bad taste of the dog park based on their first experience for the people over in Upland. Let's not, put something out there and say, "Yep, sorry, we got to change some things around." Shame on us. We didn't know because we tried to move with the right intent forward, but the reality is, let's not go out and socialize something that potentially could get pulled back or modified significantly because we don't have the data yet from a discussion between the fur friends of the town.
Or data from the meetings that it's being suggested or directed we participate in.
No, I don't think it's being directed. I don't think
Okay.
anybody has directed.
Do they have to sign off? I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I will.
Go ahead.
What does, and I mean no disrespect to the town, but I'm ignorant, what does the Open Space Committee do? And what authority do they have?
They have no more authority than we do. There is no, as far as I understand the Open Space Committee, they make recommendations like we're being asked to do, and that's about all they do. They do assessments of what is available open space and how much open space they would like to see and which parcels of land they would like for open space. So it's fairly similar to what we've been asked to do. Parks Commission, of course, does control or has some control over our parks. So
How does
they
Mr.
operate
Coyle-
differently.
How does Mr. Coyle interrelate?
Mr. Coyle is head of the DPW, of which now the Parks Department is a portion.
So he oversees the
He
park.
oversees parks and highway department and
Okay, but Mr. Coyle, maybe I missed a meeting, but I think you were there with me, where Mr. Coyle talked about this project. So I'm so confused. If he oversees parks, how would this work?
oh, I don't think that he has an objection
Mm-hmm.
to this idea. In fact, I think he's very pro.
No, he was very open to it.
Yeah.
He
Just
loved
making
the
sure I
idea
didn't
of-
have a
Yeah.
lapse.
No, I don't.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
don't believe you did.
Yeah.
All right, what I'd like to say, and I'm sorry because I missed maybe the most important point of what I was supposed to get for you. I think we ought to push with this as fast as we can, because the answer I got was, after we submit what we want for a mailing in terms of outreach, it will take the executive secretary's, the town manager's office 2 weeks to complete that. In other words, we need to get this out to Julie's office at least 2 weeks before we're gonna meet on it. It will take
So they
that
need
long.
to
And
be-
we,
to
and
prepare.
we want the abutters to have 2 weeks before the meeting, so like
So-
now,
Like a month.
yeah.
So we're looking at the end of April now at the,
So the
probably
meeting,
at the
if
earliest.
we're
I
looking
think
at the
the-
meeting as the 27th,
Yeah,
then we need to get,
this
need to
done
get
in 2
this
weeks.
to town hall now.
But we
Because
really
it gives them 2 weeks to mail it out, and then we want the abutters to have this
No,
for 2 weeks
no,
before
she
they.
claims that, no, that it's the 2 weeks, and this is not a legal hearing that we're asking for, but that is what is required for legal hearings, to provide 2 weeks of
Notice.
notification.
Oh, okay, 2 weeks
Yeah,
of
they-
notice, so, okay, but all right, I was confused. So how long would it take them to mail it out once they have a copy of
Once
it?
she has the copy of it, it would probably go out in the next couple of days.
Okay,
And then,
that's what I was confused about.
Say I'll do it myself.
so I
It's
would,
like
I
kinda
would think
do
that
it.
that would be our next step, because I think that as we complete more and more of our tasks, that puts, and I hate to use the word pressure, but at least it gives a reason for the other groups who have tasks of their own to work harder. If they can say, oh, we're waiting for the dog park committee to complete this, then they won't do anything. But if the dog park has completed everything and is saying, now our work is done, how about you?
But,
That gives some impetus.
but there's that risk. I hear the pressure element, but then there's this sense of conflict I have that if we hold the public meeting, community discussion, but then something changes or evolves during this, we run the risk of looking bad. We've created a
Well, I don't
record
know.
of prior
It
inconsistent
depends on
statements.
I
how you
think that-
mean looking bad. Do you say the selectmen look bad because when they first ran this by the public
said no,
the
yeah.
public that came to that meeting was dead set against it.
Do-
That's the worst thing that could happen to us, is the people that say, no, we don't want it there, it's a
Can
stupid
we
idea.
ask, just curiosity, can we ignore this? And, sorry.
Just go
Little
forward,
sassy
just go ahead
sometimes.
forward.
Can we ignore this timeline? Because this timeline is assuming that they're gonna raise the funds first and blah, blah, blah. I don't know if that's
It's
what,
also assuming that
is
every
being-
step takes a month.
well,
Right.
that's true too, but basically what I'm saying
No
is
agile
could,
government.
we could ask the Board of Selectmen to vote not only for approval of that site as far as writing the grant, we could still ask the Board of Selectmen to approve the town to move forward with a grant.
Yeah.
Right.
We don't have to even look at this, so if that is the case, I would suggest that we do that, and we keep going on the timeline that we've been talking
That we've
about,
been talking
and we do
about.
push forward with this, because this is merely
A suggestion.
estimate slash suggestion. I highly doubt that the Fur Friends are going to do all of this work and raise all those funds ahead of time.
No.
However-
I don't even think it asks them to raise all the funds.
No,
But
it
it
asks them
does.
it asks them to apply for the 503C before the
Before.
application.
And then they do all the funding, and then
Right.
deadline to complete design underground. Well, so then, okay, so part of it is before. But essentially, they first had that trust where they had the verbal commitment. And then with this committee, they were asked to write a letter stating, an official letter that states that they were willing to meet the 10%. And I believe that some town pushback has been, well, how do we know who the Fur Friends are, and how can we trust that that 10% is going to happen? And that's fine, and I
That's a fair
understand.
argument.
It's a fair argument. However, again, the design grant, which I believe the majority, as Elise mentioned, is easily, well, it's just like any other grant. It's going to take some man hours, but Julie even mentioned in that Board of Selectmen meeting last year that part of their jobs is to do things that are a benefit of the community. So using town resources for potential town recreational use is not an abuse of any resources whatsoever. That is literally their role. That's what they're supposed to do.
And I agree with that. The only thing that, the only thing that's, you could also infer from this timeline is most of us probably don't have any visibility into what any other projects are that could be going in on town during this time frame that may be drawing resources in one way or another. It's just another thing to throw out there. We don't know.
Sure. But I wouldn't let that stop us from
I'm
suggesting
not
it.
opposed with. I think we need to put some caveats around it, though, right? If we end up going into a public, meeting, there's some things we can probably state that with some confidence, and some things that we can't state with confidence, where we're going to just have to say, you know what, what's under consideration. We don't have a full answer for it yet, which is the truth on some of these things.
Sure.
And then more or less just go down that road. Because I guess one of the positive outcomes, even though the Upland Street thing was not effective in terms of how it went down, the majority of the people that spoke all weren't opposed to the dog park idea. They were
They just didn't want it in their
opposed
backyard.
Maybe one that
in there. And the reason I saw through it is they had a personal connection with the land for whatever the reason. They viewed that as an extension of an extra amenity to where they lived. And quite frankly, had we done all the types of things that we're talking about with respect to outreach and education, I don't think that would have been enough
in this particular case for those people,
Yeah.
is my sense.
Right.
So I'm not opposed with setting this out there. I mean, we still need to wordsmith it maybe a little bit. I'll still throw out the skateboard, comment to throw out there. And if we do hold a public meeting, then I think we need to probably maybe, define what we're able to talk about and what we're not ready to talk about, we can't talk about. So that, we don't put false hopes and dreams or potentially, upset or excite somebody when we don't, for all the wrong reasons.
So would it be productive to just go through the list briefly of what the primary concerns that the neighbors and the Board of Selectmen had through those meetings?
Do you have that one?
I do have a list. Do you want me to just state it? The
Yeah.
computer issue. So I can state it, but I don't have it. The neighbor concerns were, and I have this as a document on the laptop that, yeah. So the neighbor, oh, you're gonna,
The boat
you
anchor.
amaze me. The neighbor concerns were noise, public safety, there's a daycare in the neighborhood, or what would happen if a dog escaped, an increase in traffic,
Oh, I spelled dog. Go ahead.
decrease in property value, a decrease in property value which would result in a decrease in property taxes collected, which would decrease in a decrease in property in revenue for the town. So it's like 3 cause and effect. Decrease in property value, result, decrease in taxes received, result, decrease in revenue. Increase in foot traffic. NIMBY,
Not in my backyard.
It's me. Traffic.
The street, I thought one of the things too, with the narrowness of whatever street there.
getting there.
Yeah.
The street is in poor condition, and 2 cars cannot pass.
Ward Street, yeah.
Yeah, any of those.
Mhm.
Lexington.
And they were critical of the validity of the survey methodology that the town employed. And
Educational.
they said that too many man-hours and too much town resources had been devoted to the project.
They don't know that.
Okay. And the Board of Selectmen concerns were, in town administration,
You separate those, yeah, things.
were that the, quote, "the proposed dog park must be good for the community as a whole," end quote. And then the resulting Board of Selectmen concerns revolved around fur friends and how to make their intent to fundraise more, quote, formal, end quote. And then the concerns were about the dog park committee, us, how we were selected, interview versus lottery,
But that's all done.
yes. But, so I wanted to just
Yeah, sure.
state that those were the concerns. So,
Um,
yeah, major neighbor themes, I think, as Jim said, are largely educational.
Yeah, I would add maybe a couple to that. So, a couple of them were suggesting that, like these other groups that we're now hearing about now, for the first time in this meeting, Parks and Recreation, Open Space and
Space.
Planning, either they were to be included in our meetings or they were to be run by type of thing. So I see that if this is what you had stated earlier, somewhat of a standard process, whether we like it or not, that if we were to go down a road where we didn't go through the standard process and we have people on the board that are used to hearing and seeing things in a certain way, then that would come back to haunt us, type of a thing. So we didn't know, and I don't think all of us knew that until now, but that's for sure. So, let's see what else there.
So,
The other thing I'd throw out there is, there was clearly people, it goes back to the communication, that even though the town may have thought they were effective in their communications, clearly they were not to the level they may have thought, because there were people in that room that were not feeling it. A lot of people came in amped up, ready to go, and ready to take off, so there was definitely
Procedural deficit.
a disconnect there, so that's,
Sure.
if we're talking like a risk list or, then that's on there.
One of the things, if I can add, one of the things I love the most about Lemansky is that it alleviates so many of those concerns.
Right.
I think
Yeah.
so many of those concerns are directly related to immediate abutters and being in a neighborhood or residential neighborhood. foot traffic. I mean, dog escape could happen anywhere,
it
so I
could-
think
it-
that's
it-
illegitimate
It could
anyways.
happen when you're walking the dog and your leash, you could, I mean, some of those,
Right.
I mean, some of those people in that neighborhood have dogs, and it could
Right.
happen the same time if they open their
Right.
back door and it went jetting out the thing. That's
Right.
outside.
Absolutely.
And many of them walk their dogs on leash there, but just as many walk them off leash.
Absolutely.
Correct,
Yep.
yes.
So that was one of the main reasons I think a lot of us were in favor of Lemansky, which alleviates so many of those concerns. And as you reminded us, Jim, that so many people went up, because I was there, to the podium, and they directed it right to the fur friends and said, this isn't about, not having it in a dog park. It was more personal, the land in this
Yeah.
area,
Mentality.
There was a
the
historical
design of it, and going
connection.
in between, two homes off of Ward Street, which is an already small like I totally understood so many of the concerns that they had. But again, it wasn't even so much a NIMBY as it was a bad design, in my opinion, in that spot.
I think there was an equal number. There were folks who were saying, when we purchased the home, there was, this value of sentimentality, et cetera, et cetera.
Sure.
And then there were other people who said, I'm not opposed to a dog park,
Right.
just not here.
Right.
So that's what I put into the
Yes,
not here
so
category.
true.
So when we look at this list, like noise, public safety, dog escape, traffic, property value, foot traffic, I mean, those to me are all general themes that you can apply to anywhere that you're at.
And we've already talked about all that stuff.
Your research,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, we've already covered almost all of it.
Right.
I don't think there's anything on that list that we haven't addressed
No.
in general, or even
No.
just on this flyer.
No, yeah, we
This flyer alone.
Exactly.
It's so thorough.
But I think, I think one thing that really, I don't know, it came out in the research that Elise did that I think is a very important piece to this, as opposed to why this location more so than others, is that there's a high correlation between dog parks being built within recreational facilities
Yes.
as opposed to being, in a butter type situation. So I think this is, if there is so-called a sweet spot for dog parks,
This is
then I
it.
would say this is one of them.
Yep, for sure.
And as we discussed the last meeting, I did reach out to, just did it like a couple days ago, in the spirit of transparency, some of the nonprofits, because Jim had asked for about what was their contribution. Because with some of the parks, it was raised that the equivalent of Fur Friends and, say, AIR contributed, but what was their dollar contribution versus the proportion of the park versus annual maintenance cost, etc. So I reached out to 4 at random, and if I don't get a response, then I'll reach out to more. But I didn't want too much data and then be told I was selectively picking data. So we'll take 4 and take it from there.
Okay, you haven't heard back from anyone yet?
One person said, I'm working on it.
Okay.
And one person I got a reply that said at a planning board conference, I don't even know what that is, until tomorrow.
Okay.
And then no reply from the other 2.
Okay.
So that's fair to say in progress. But when I get it, I can put that in the
Yeah.
drive
Yeah.
because that's
Yep.
data. So that'll work.
Thank you.
So I guess going back to your list, to me, we just need to make sure that our stuff,
Covers.
presentation, and collateral more or less supports that. And this, I don't think you have to submit data sources, for this type of a thing.
There's
I did. I asked.
There are.
Yes, I think
cited
she's
them.
done.
This is new from last week.
Yep.
Yeah, I updated it.
And what's great is that they're very different types of data sources.
Yep.
Well done.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah, awesome.
I think the thing we need to keep in mind is proposed dog park must be good for a community as a whole. That's what we're going to hear from the town administrator.
Yep.
And that's because I heard it repeatedly on the tape. And that's what I sense we will hear from the selectmen.
One of the sites that I cited is specifically how cities may benefit from dog parks, benefits of dog parks and communities. 2 of those sites are specific, 3 from the bottom, the Pet Safe. That was, the Pet Safe one is the flyer. that you had shared. So it has that, but the other two above were more articles and research on how they're beneficial to communities. So I think those are good to have. But they summarize, I mean, it was hard for me to go through and cite based on everything, but they really do summarize essentially everything that we're saying
Yeah.
that we know is true, but you have to find a source for. So that's what those, I tried to pick the best sources that would fit into that box. That really did cover where, you know, we state that dogs that are more active and social are better behaved and they're not barking in their homes, and that's found on several of those sites. So I tried to pick a few that overlapped. You know, if you did a Venn diagram, it was
No, also I pulled out on the engineering thing I did from the study. There's environmental impacts too, but in positive ways because they before they build, they de-louse and de-tick
yep.
the spaces, and they make, and we're already talking about how the way they have to build the water in, it's going to be improving the entire space because they have to redo the parking anyway. That already improves Lemansky as a whole.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So there were some things that I wasn't able to fit on there. So one thing is I haven't, because I don't know where or how to put the skate park thing, so I had left that out, not like intentionally to not put it in there, but I wasn't sure if that belonged in the cost section, if I mentioned there may be a cost to relocate. And the other piece was, which we all know, the human benefits, the social community benefits. And I don't know if that, it's not really like a question of concern, so I wasn't sure that really
So-
we could fit it on
So
here.
here's a couple of
Not
thoughts,
that they're
right?
wonderful
I mean,
things.
this doesn't have to be, the Bible from A to Z.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
So to that point, if we want to take out like the sources and we want to, move stuff around, but at the bottom, both sides, for more information, visit X. Well, then there you can
Put all
put,
the
you
sites
can
there.
put, whatever you want to put type of thing. And, most people are going to have access to the internet. And if they don't, I suggest you go to your local public library. You can, could spin up a session there if you needed to. I'm sure they'll help you.
What we can also do too when we have the forum is we can put up more information in
Sure.
a more
Yes,
That's what I was
absolutely.
gonna
in
suggest.
a more friendly PowerPoint than the one we have prepared for the Board of Selectmen or the one that we're working on for the Board of Selectmen.
Right.
We can build up, why is this good for me? Even, I don't have a dog, why should I want this type of slide
Exactly.
PowerPoint? And then we can talk more about the skate park too and things like that.
Because I think it's about knowing your audience.
Yeah.
And I think the public presentation would be articulated far differently.
Right.
And with very different thoroughness of data.
Yeah.
So here's what I would suggest, right? We have some things we can continue to move on for, right? But and I'm personally willing to throw an element of time into this. But I am going to throw a motion on the board that I want some confirmation that both girlfriends and the town are going to meet in the nearest future possible, so that we can get an understanding of what reality is.
Yes.
Can we-
Because I don't
agree.
think it's fair to us to sit here and, if there's something that can be potentially won and it's reasonable and all the stakeholders that are involved, it's a win-win for everybody. Stakeholders meaning the town, the fur friends, the town administration, then great, let's keep on it. But if we're just more or less can't get past ourselves for whatever the reasons, process, personalities, who knows, then I would prefer to know that as quickly as possible, because then I would say, if we can't get past it, then let's stop wasting our time. We can go out and have a few beers somewhere and hang out together. We don't necessarily have to do it here if this is not going to be something that's, even has a remote shot at being winnable.
So, can we arrange for a meeting between Julie and a representative from the Fur Friends? Either at our next meeting or at another time when everyone's available? Because I feel like...
Oh, you want to be part of the process?
Yes, I feel like we kind of need to facilitate because it's not happening on their own.
But has there been an opportunity, but I don't think, I'm
I
not
don't know.
disagreeing.
Yeah.
But I don't know with certainty
I don't know
that it's been a
if
suggestion.
if they've been in contact with each other at all at this point.
So why shouldn't we facilitate that? If we have a problem with this schedule because we have concerns about both sides, let's get everyone together in a room and talk.
I don't think there's anything stopping us from taking the initiative to attempt to do that.
Yeah.
and I don't have any problem going down that road. Like I said, the sooner we know that it's gonna happen or not gonna happen, the sooner we're gonna know what the potential is for good or potentially not so good. And then that's gonna help us make determinations of how we wanna proceed. So to that point, I mean, I assume you can reach out to Julie. I don't know if it's, should Julie be, should we be passing on the task of Julie to reach out to Fur Friends? Can we go from the other side and say Fur Friends and kind of, say what we're doing and what we're trying to doing? And can we get, everybody at least to get back to the table one more time and, let's learn with the, again, I don't know if the past here has got some issues or not. I have no visibility into that, but I will say this, if it does have issues, then let's discuss them.
Yeah.
Let's be adult
Figure it
about
out.
them. Let's be able to be professional, because if we can't get past them, then those issues more or less are submarining something that is a positive, could be very positive for the community as a whole. And I think that would be a shame if we let that, type of scenario happen. So, with the such thing as, reach out for the greater good and kind of put aside your own personal concerns, then I would say here's your opportunity to do that.
So we have two models. One would be, we ask the town administration and Fur Friends to meet and provide us with report, or the second is the integrated model.
I would absolutely love to sit there and participate and try to help facilitate. I mean, they may not let us, but maybe they do is what they need. If there have been challenges and issues, maybe they need somebody to come in and do a third-party facilitation and just kind of keep everybody on how do we work together, be productive, what are the goals, let's just make sure we know doing this, what are your concerns?
So are you suggesting they come to a meeting with all of us?
They could,
They could do that.
That is
but-
an option.
that's an option.
That meeting would be an open meeting
Yeah.
on television. And I'm not
Right.
so sure that that's the proper format to
I would agree.
conduct the kind of negotiations they're gonna have to conduct.
I would agree.
Could we have a representative of our group go? No?
I would say.
I mean, I don't think we
It's outside of
can
our
say
scope.
Okay.
to them,
I'd love to.
we want you to meet it, we want you to meet at one of our meetings, or we wanna have some of our committee at your meeting. No, I don't,
See the challenge?
You know.
I'd love to. What?
that would,
I would suggest
step
that
on
we
more
get,
toes than
that we
you
get in contact with
dance
Julie
with.
either by phone or email as soon as possible and say, we need you to arrange to have the meeting with Fur Friends ASAP. And we need to know when that's gonna take place.
both those mentioned people will see this as soon as the ordinary public will.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Will know exactly what we've said tonight.
Absolutely. And I'm pretty sure, I'm not pretty sure of anything based on this stuff. But I would hope that they would be listening. But so they've heard our concerns and our perspective. I don't know. This may need to be like a motion and a vote, because I have my opinion versus my desire.
I do know that they watched the video.
If we can, we need some data from them. We need some output from them.
Yep.
Oh, we're dead in the water. We can spend a couple more weeks and refine, the things we can have for a public meeting. But I would really, I guess I'd be, if we even smelt that, that they were able to meet together and there was just no common ground for whatever the reason, and to go out and communicate this to everybody, I mean,
It's counterproductive. I hear you.
I agree.
I hear
We
you.
would
Jim.
hear very, very soon if worst came to worst.
Absolutely. And again,
If they had no common ground, we would know almost immediately.
So we would be respectfully suggesting that the two sides meet, engage in dialogue, and provide us, to use your word, output, right?
Yep.
And in an ideal world, we would love for them to come to our meeting and have that occur. But realistically,
I mean,
that may not
and they could do this in steps. If they meet together and they can find some common ground and they can maybe, whiteboard, and be collaborative, then,
That's awesome.
write some stuff down and can come to our meeting, and now it's more of a working session where they both know where they're grounded from, right? As opposed to
potential shock and awe because they're both walking into it, maybe, you know, in a public setting, and they don't know everyone's position, it might be uncomfortable. But that's another step, do it in stages, get, you know, figure out how to work together. Once you figure out how to work together, then come back and say, here's what we got.
Who will be inviting these individuals to our?
Yeah, I don't think that this committee
I don't think
should
we
be
have the standing.
telling them to divulge whatever they come across to us. Because I don't think, that would be like the Boy Scouts saying to Putin, come and meet with us because we're conducting an education, an investigation, and we're a heck of a good group, so you ought to.
Well, I don't think we're telling them anything, though. I think we're suggesting to them that, you know, if we're going to go in front of the Board of Selectmen, in my opinion, we need to be prepared. And one of the pieces that I would suggest that we prepared on is, okay, guys, what's going to happen next? If we go ahead and we go ahead and you know, give this site a thumbs up, what's going to happen next? What's the deal with the 10%? What's the timeline? And again, because, you know, they may not expect to have everything absolutely rubber stamped, but to go in there and say, I don't know, maybe it's another 12 months, you know, 2018, 2019. The board potentially does not even know that this grant is a competitive process now, because there were, you know, if you look at the past videos, it was brought up to be, oh, we've got, you know, one resident brought up, we have like the rest of our lives to potentially go, and there's no sense of urgency. Well, maybe at the time that could have been an argument, but that has definitely changed now.
One of our first meetings, we looked into that, so, because you had saw
Right.
that there was a change.
So,
for
but they
different-
don't. They potentially may not all have the same alignment. I mean, the other thing I'll throw out there in my viewing of the Board of Selectmen is they didn't all show up at the same meetings. So, you know, I'm not saying they don't do the job on the side, but who knows what, you know, if they got a chance to read all the meeting minutes. And I would tell you from reviewing meeting minutes against what the videos were, they're not always 100% in sync, you know, in terms of all the data. Right, because you can only type so much, so there are some gaps, you know, in terms of what was stated, and you know, you can only type so fast. So I don't, you know, fault the secretary. That's just, you know, the nature of the game. You can only write and capture so much, and sometimes you may miss a few points. So I don't think we can, you know, you can go to the board. To me, to me, it's somewhat impeding our job. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there. I personally feel we can't effectively do our job in, you know, being able to be able to speak to our site location without some of this information. Okay, so here's another point, right? Well, what's going on with the skate park? How's that going to get done? What's the impact of that? So I think one piece to this that could really help is, what are the exact specifics do we need to put forward with the design application?
Do you see that as our responsibility?
Well, I see it. I see it as education. If we go back and revisit that, and not to be a bad waste of time, because then it's about, okay, well, what do we absolutely need to be able to speak to with respect to the grant to the board versus stuff that we get more time to figure out. And again, I hear these comments around, and again, maybe because I'm not the most worldly when it comes to municipal government, okay? I look at things from, it's great that the committee has a scope, and I will say that scope was very loosely defined, and there was a lot of things that, to me, you know, I have a whole slew of recommendations on how I would put forth to the town and the Board of Selectmen. If you're going to pull together a committee for like a special project, it could be done a lot better than how it was done in this particular instance. There's a lot of opportunities for improvement there. So it's the what point I'm getting at?
Yeah,
is,
but I don't see
success.
I don't see any success coming from us criticizing actions that are beyond our scope. In other words, if you say to the selectmen, you did a lousy job appointing a committee.
I don't look at it as criticism. I look at it as, you know.
Well, they're going to look at it as criticism.
Well, then, you know,
because
sometimes
they're political figures.
Well, unfortunately, you know, they're human beings like the rest of us. We all make mistakes. We have strengths and weaknesses. And if they don't, you know, if they don't want feedback as to how a process went, in terms of what went well and what did not go so well, well, then you know what? Then maybe I'll start running for selectman.
Well, that's
Because,
all right.
because if that's the way we're gonna operate, I don't think that's the way it should be.
Respectfully, could we provide the feedback about the process after we have a?
Sure.
Yeah, I would think.
Sure, I'm just throwing it out there, because to me, I think that's one thing. Let's, and if we could find out that July is when we're talking of July 2018, if we're interpreting this the way this color-coded thing is that's a big piece of information. And to me, usually when you do a swag in terms of an estimate, it's 4 to 6 weeks, maybe 1 to 2 months. I mean, this is significant. This is over a year from now,
Yeah.
right? And none of us had any type of visibility into this. So I think step one is this somewhat in the ballpark of what really is there? Step two is there a willingness? To me, we're suggesting. If they don't, we can't to your point, we can't mandate them to do anything. But in the interest of trying to get a dog park in Auburn, it is suggested that both of you come together and kind of make some agreements on some of the variables here, so that in a unified front, we could then present back to the Board of the Board of Selectmen that here's the plan.
Okay, I need you to repeat 1, but with regards to 2, the unified front, if we were presenting to the Board of Selectmen, wouldn't Fur Friends kind of sort of be there as a stakeholder to do their piece? Because I don't want to speak for them, and I'm pretty sure they don't want us speaking for them.
Yeah.
Right?
I'm not saying we have to. I'm just saying is if maybe this is something that I don't know what the process is here, right? Because what we're talking about here is clarification of goals,
Okay.
right? Because our goals were very loosely defined, to begin with. So to me is the board, and this goes back to what is the success criteria, which to me, to me, if you have a committee or a task force or something along those lines, you should always have some sort of success criteria attached to it, and I don't believe we've ever had that. I think if
No, I think we have one, and it has always been the same, and it hasn't been up in the air. Our success criteria is getting this moved to the, at least to the step
To apply
where
for
we're
it.
not involved.
Right.
Yes,
Correct.
to apply for a
Right.
grant, to
That's
get
all
necessary funding,
website.
those are all parts of it, but those are not the parts that we're responsible for.
We have one piece of the pie, so to speak.
Yes, and to dabble in somebody else's piece and,
Take away.
yeah.
And some, we don't always share nicely. Can you restate what 1 was, please?
well, in terms of steps,
Yes.
let's see. Well, what
2 is to suggest suggestion for town administration for friends to meet, unified front, clarification of goals.
Step one is, can we get validation from the town that we are interpreting this multi-layered Excel color document to mean that the grant for the design would be completed sometime in July of 2018.
I think that's a fair, again, I'm writing down what you're saying. Julie prepared this when? This week?
Yes, this week.
I'm going with it's fair. I don't like it at all, one bit,
But that's
not even a little.
Fair
but-
interpretation of the timeline.
It's, I think, her interpretation of the longest timeline, because she does not, from her position, it's not to make a guess that she can't realize. It's not to set the closest possible timeline and miss that, because that's not what a town manager does.
Right, that you would rather
Worst case scenario.
under promise and,
And no
Yeah,
rest.
yeah, I get it. It's no different in the
Yeah.
corporate world.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's way out there, but the town moves slowly. If there are parts of this dog park that require funds beyond the 10% from the Fur Friends and beyond the Stanton grant, those funds can only be raised by action at a town meeting.
so that would be.
And this
state
is
park.
why that would be something that the grant and grantor said we won't cover. We won't cover moving that skate park. We'll approve of what you're gonna do with that location after it's moved, but we're not paying for its move. And that's gonna require a town meeting. The next town meeting after the annual, and you're beyond, when the articles have been submitted for the annual May town meeting, the next town meeting is probably in September or October. So you don't have the entire funds until October. Now, there are a lot of things, a lot of tasks, potential tasks on that list that you can do before October. You don't have to wait until all of the money is in hand. But before you put contractors to work on this site, you've got to.
But I'm so confused. The design phase precedes construction.
Yes, the design phase can be done at any time.
But that's all we were asking for,
Yeah.
correct?
Right.
Okay, so the
No, I
design
think
phase
we're
doesn't
concerned-
involve digging.
No, I think we're concerned that we don't have a dog park until June of 2018.
That's when they.
No, no, I think it's, I mean, if I
Wait,
read
that's
that,
not
it's
how I
worse
read
than
it.
that.
That's
According to that,
beginning.
it'll be
You know,
even after that.
It's even worse than
Yeah.
that.
The
Let's be
timeline
honest.
says September of 2018 is when
Well-
construction will start.
Would start.
So
Yeah.
construction in 2008,
So-
September, start
So,
date.
so again, in terms, before we get more amped up, including myself,
No, no,
about the date, I think we just need to validate, are we interpreting the data that we're seeing correctly? Because that's gonna, that will help some of what our perceptions that we're going off with are gonna be based on. And if it is, that, I got two issues.
Right, I mean, if those dates are in fact correct, even worst case, we may not have the money available from Stanton at that point.
Absolutely.
Right.
right.
But I want to go back to your point, Chairman, you know, with respect to our goals, right? So I get, go choose a site location. Okay, we took that literal, that means go out and pick something. Is that all we need to go back and say, you know, excuse me, selectmen, this is our pick? But then, to me,
This is our recommendation.
it's a recommendation. Okay, so then my next question is that it? Is that all they go with at that point? There's not like, why, how did you come to it?
Oh, no, I think they will say, why did you pick that?
What concerns are there? What challenges? What are the pros? What are the negatives? Because if that's if that's being, you know, what would be to come, well, then that's why I then say, well, we've got some things we got, you know, that we don't know about, right? And you know, with respect to the moving of the skate park, whether or not fur friends in the town can, you know, make it happen together.
Would that change our recommendation?
No.
Right.
It could,
Well,
See,
the
it would
skate
not
park-
change our
Well, the skate
recommendation.
park potentially could.
Yeah, the skate park is
The
the thing
cost
that's
of the
gonna.
skate park?
yeah.
well, I think both could,
Okay.
because if we don't have any evidence
Right.
that fur friends of the town can't work together, it doesn't matter what
It
the
doesn't
site
matter.
is.
Right.
So, I mean, I get the fact that we've got like this, a few statements. You will go ahead and do a site location and do a cost analysis, and it's so incredibly vague in my opinion. I'm about success. How do we get to success, right? We're serving because we want to provide something of benefit and of value to the community, okay? I personally am not gonna let myself, I will try to understand the process, the policies and procedures, but I'm not necessarily gonna just stop and say, thank you, ma'am, thank you, mother, may I have another one? You know, I'm just not gonna do that, especially when I don't think it's right. So, I think if we just went in there and said, here's our site, without kind of, you know, having some understanding of how some of these things that we're talking about fall and land, if I'm the board of selectmen, I'm gonna say, well, thank you, but I don't know how you can expect me to put a vote on this. It just, you know, it goes back to maybe some of the other thing, we've got no power.
That's
I
right.
think we
Yeah.
have
You
a lot.
are correct.
I think we have a lot of information that supports the site, which is one of our responsibilities, one of our rules. So I don't think we're going in there without knowing. There are obviously variables. I feel like with any project, there are going to be variables, and I think the Board of Selectmen understand that there will be variables. However, what we do know for a fact, without speaking to Fur Friends or Julie and having them interact, is that as of now, the Fur Friends have committed on paper in a letter to making that 10%. And my question is more or less, you know, we were encouraged to move things quickly, to expedite this process. We were encouraged not only by town management, but also by the Board of Selectmen in their statements in the December meeting. I'm curious as to what changed, but it doesn't change the fact that we still recommend the site. Yes, variables, a huge variable is the skate park, and I totally agree. I don't think, I'm trying to think of how to word this. Is that something we can officially know prior to the design phase? If it's, you know, the full cost of what it may be, and if not, again, I suggest that we ask the Board of Selectmen to at least look at the design process and apply for the grant. Because again, these variables aren't even going to be known until we do the full analysis and apply and find out whether or not we're going to get this grant. And also, the Fur Friends contingency won't even matter if we don't get the grant. So asking them to establish themselves, which this timeline does, and having them, you know, obviously there are many members of the Fur Friends. They can work with the town, providing that the town is transparent and upfront about, you know, this is the site we want and we want to do this way. I don't think that will be a problem. I don't know how far into that relationship we as a community need to go, because our job is to say, this is the site we recommend. As far as we know, the Fur Friends have said they will raise the 10%. Please consider this site and consider applying for this grant, because I understand the project manager, like all those moving pieces, but I feel we've done our due diligence with this site and with what we can as far as making a site recommendation, which was, you know, our #1 goal and job.
I agree.
I don't know if that makes sense. So like,
No,
I
think that it's
respect.
well done.
I respect
agree.
what you're saying with all,
100%.
and I think we are prepared. I think we are educated on what it's going to look like. But if we're recommending a site, and we all agree this is the site, and sure, there may be unforeseen costs, but as we know, Fur Friends is 10% in. We have the letter that states that, which we were asked to get, and we got. That's
So I hear what you're saying. I'm not opposed, so I'll throw out one other option that I think might incorporate some of what you're saying. A lot of what we're trying to do here is anticipate. We all agree? We're trying to anticipate different scenarios based on possibilities, right? And that to me is all because things are a little bit loosey-goosey in terms of what does the selectmen need in order to go ahead and make a decision? Do they just need a spoken word? Or do they need, you know, more data, you know, studies, surveys, eyewitness accounts in order to make a decision? Well, obviously the work effort and the steps involved to, you know, to do one or the other is extremely wide in terms of variation. Very quick, we looked, we did, here it is, done. And if that's, you know, that they want, then we're ready to go. If
Right.
if they're not able to render a vote though on that because of all the lingering questions, concerns they may have, well then they're going to need more. What is stopping us from maybe giving them? I don't know. Maybe this has never been done in the history of government, right? What is stopping us from giving them a one-page? Here's where we're at. Here's a summary of where we think we're at. Here's some of the challenges that we're kind of, you know, trying to work through. At the end of the day, we want to make sure that we come to you with you know, the right amount of information that's going to allow you to make a vote one way or the other. Give us some feedback, right? And that to me kind of takes out some of the shooting in the dark that we're somewhat doing to some degree. It allows us to then be more targeted and focused, and also increases our chances of success because we're going to be able to align better to what they're thinking. And they got different personalities and different backgrounds, so I'm just throwing it out there because it just feels like, you know, you can do it a couple of different ways. You can go in there and they can tell you, thank you, we need all this, come back at other dates. Or you could be proactive and say, hey, you know, here's a little bit of what we're thinking, here's some of the things that we're toying around. What do you need from us, you know, in order to make a decision? They give us some feedback, we make some adjustments, then we go back in. So I'm just throwing it out there. I just kind of feel like all of us have different interpretations of what they gave us, There's no, there was no a lot of Q&A around what they gave us, what our role is, what's not. I mean, I never got a piece of paper that says, this is the committee, here's your, role, responsibility, here's the things that you're gonna be done. It was just kind of, looking back, I think that was a big miss.
I think we've got.
We did, the
I
first day
think
we
we've
met.
got, yeah,
They gave us a one-pager?
Yeah.
We were given our mission. It was
there's
the
one
three.
page,
Yep.
3 items on it,
2 sentences?
3 bullets, no, 3.
Yeah. I cannot produce it on command, but we have it.
See, what I see is we have no alternatives unless we pick a different site. We've chosen this site because we feel, after all the work we've done, and it wasn't a tremendous amount, but it certainly was enough to pick the best site.
Yep.
We've picked it. Are we saying, well, if there's a question, maybe we should pick another site? No,
No, this is
because,
the best one.
yeah, I think we've got to go with the best site that we've got available to us. And this is obviously the one that we've agreed on. Maybe the people who live in this neighborhood will hate the idea. Maybe 150 people will come to this meeting and throw tomatoes at us. I don't think they
Give them
will.
ideas, don't
Jeez,
give them
Yeah, I
don't
don't
give 'em,
think there is.
ideas.
There is, huh, but I'm going to wear my
Anyway.
old clothes.
So, we're gonna go forward with this. You have more edits to make?
If you would like me to, yes.
Could you clarify what you mean with by go forward?
Finalize it.
Finalize it,
I don't know what that means. For, like, to vote on it or
Fair
accept
to
it.
be in the hands of
do you have more edits to make beyond what we have in
budding
front of us?
leaders.
I don't know,
Just the
actually.
date. Just
Yeah,
the
just-
date
just
that needs to
yeah.
be put in there,
Date.
and that's it, right?
And then if anyone had any other suggestions.
I don't, because honestly, there's already a lot here, and
Yep.
we can put
But
more
it's
stuff
great
online.
information.
We can put more stuff in a deck for the presentation.
Right.
I think what is here is enough.
Right.
So what I would like is, if you have more edits to make, I don't know if you do, aside from the date, but otherwise, we can vote on it
Yeah.
and submit it either now or 2 weeks from now or whatever, and ask them to send them out. And then go forward with
What do you
this,
think?
with the forum on the 27th.
More another shot at this?
I
Or?
didn't spell check it.
Maybe you should look at it one more time.
Are there
we
any
as a-
Spanish words on it?
It
So
might
we as
be.
a group agree that having a community meeting is a good idea?
Yes.
I agree.
I agree.
Anyone opposed?
But I do have the concern about the timeline. I'm concerned about having that meeting, as the community already had a meeting almost last year, and having the process take that much longer and losing the fire, if that makes, I do have that concern, but I do think having a community meeting is still,
I think it's
Important.
only
It's a
going to
matter of
benefit
when.
us.
Yeah.
yeah, I think so too. I hope so. I hope so too.
I think it's only going to benefit us. We need to make sure we have at least one representative from For Friends there
Mhm.
who can speak on their behalf. But other than that, I think it's only going to benefit. I don't think it would cause any damage. I mean, we'll hear concerns, but I think on the whole, it's going to be beneficial.
We will hear concerns and
Yeah.
we will not address them, we will tell them up
Correct.
front.
Sure.
We're
It'll
not
be
going
good
to
to hear
address them, we're
concerns
going to
early.
take your concerns back and look at them and give them the time they deserve. and
Absolutely.
Not answer them on the spur of the moment. I would like all of our friends to be there. I think as many people who
But
we know are in
But
favor
someone
of
who's
this.
willing to speak. I know that is the president still in Florida? Okay.
I believe so.
Do they have a vice?
No, they have no offices.
Yes, they
right?
do.
Do they?
Yes, they do.
So someone who's willing to speak
Yes.
needs
I'm
to
sure.
come.
Yeah.
The president will be back by the 27th.
Okay. All right. We vote on this?
Sure.
Should we?
All in favor?
Well,
One discussion.
I just want to make sure, what are we voting on? We're voting on the contents of this flyer, or we're voting on the
Contents of the
meeting?
flyer.
Just the content.
Depends on the flyer, and then aside from adding the date, this is what we want mailed to the abutters.
We want a letter of explanation in addition to
Oh,
this.
yes. Can someone from the town write that, or should we write that? Because it needs to be
No,
on like their letterhead.
I think that, I hate to dump something more on you, but you have been so eloquent up to this point that,
Watch out, or it might be sassy.
Oh. Why do I always get on a committee with sassy women and quiet men?
What would you call Jim Quiet?
No.
You're not gonna find that a trait of mine.
So the skate park is going on here?
Well, that's a potential cost. I just don't
No,
know
I
how to word it.
No,
I think we can bring it up at.
yeah, I don't think
Yeah.
that needs to
Put
be
it
on
on
here.
deck,
If you
yeah.
want to put it on the explanatory letter, go ahead.
But I don't think, yeah, I
But
don't
it
think.
doesn't
it's-
need
I
to be
don't
on
think you
here.
need to. I think that's fine the way it is. And if you put more on there, they won't read the whole thing.
Right.
And the,
It's like what we say at that meeting. If we say too much,
Right.
you know as well as I do that
Use
people who
against
come
you.
to meetings like this
I
don't
think of
like to
that.
sit still
That's on my list
for
too now.
more than 20 minutes.
Sure.
And for your students, you struggle after the 20 minutes to have something entertaining for them that will
True,
keep them
true.
alive.
and I know we talked about the call box because the chief wants it and we're in favor of it,
Yes.
but we don't have funding for that right
Okay, because I know we mentioned that and I added it because I'm like, I think it will be, but I'm not sure.
I don't know if it's
Okay,
covered by
no.
Stanton. I legitimately don't know.
I don't
I don't
know.
believe so.
I don't
So
think it
therefore
is.
we
Just,
can't
I can
speak to
completely
it.
remove it then.
Yeah.
Okay, sure.
Right?
I only added it because
It
we
was
had
something that,
Yeah.
it was something that was an afterthought
Okay.
by the chief, that he just wanted to make sure that we had talked about it,
Sure.
because they were
You
gonna
know,
be
there are
ripping up
some
the parking
strange
lot.
things
Right.
if you look at
But I did put
So
on
I don't
there-
know what the
that-
cost would be.
Okay, well,
I did put on there that Chief Andrew Slucas is fully supportive of the site, as he's mentioned.
Yes.
Ron
Stated.
thinks
Thank
the
you.
call box is covered by the grant.
I don't know.
Oh.
I don't know
Oh.
whether it is or not.
Well,
but I
let's
would
find
So I'll
like
leave
out.
it
to know.
off. So I'll leave it off if we don't know. I'd rather leave it off.
Why,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah, if we don't know, we
No.
can leave it off.
we don't know.
It'd be another benefit to add later.
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
I think there are a lot of stuff that you're gonna put in a design grant request
Yeah.
that may or may not
May
be
not be
part
right.
of the final. And that's, part of what Stan will do with that design grant. Tell us what we will have to pay
And I
for.
would just like to put on the record that there are many, many other benefits that do not fit on this flyer, unfortunately. But there truly are, and I wish I could add even more, but since we were just addressing questions.
We're gonna
that's what we
make
got.
a presentation.
Sure. Oh, yeah, definitely.
That'll be covered.
We are? Okay.
By we I meant like me and Nicole.
Oh, but you are?
Yeah, for the forum.
Oh.
To sort of like address questions that aren't on here, like, why is this good for us? Why is this, I don't have a dog. Why is this good for us? Type thing.
Oh, okay.
Just to,
Some sort of presentation, you mean?
yeah.
I missed that, I'm sorry.
Did I thought I said that.
I don't know. I
No,
don't
you
think
may
so.
have not have said it out
Yeah,
loud.
I swear I
You may
did.
have.
Sometimes
You were
gymnastics
talking your
do-
own. You gotta say
It
it.
happens.
Use
It
your
happens
outside
sometimes.
voice.
Sometimes I'll say it in my head and I won't
Use
remember
your
whether or not I
outside
said it in
voice,
person.
Sarah.
So, yes, we'll make a presentation for the forum that addresses things that we can't fit here.
Okay.
That will be in happy
So
language.
this is almost like, basically this is anticipating
This is like-
negative
Yeah.
questions and whatnot, and maybe we have a positive thing to present. Is that what you mean?
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Well, I
And
mean,
also-
I wouldn't put it in that light. I would just say it's educational.
This
Sure, it
will
is.
let them-
That's what
You're right.
that's
And
what it is.
also-
Knowledge
is power.
I
Yeah.
am anticipating people not actually reading
Did you
it.
see the rainbow when the
without-
star go by?
I don't know
Yeah.
if this is okay. This is a question, more or
You
less.
are asking.
There's already been a PowerPoint that was created last year.
Yeah, I want to make my own.
Well, in the in saving time,
Yeah.
Perhaps
Take a look
using
at it.
that PowerPoint, if you wanted to do the positive PowerPoint, perhaps looking at that and
Yeah.
fitting it to our needs and
Yeah.
our goals.
Sure.
Maybe an idea rather than completely generating a new
new one.
I mean, I'm
PowerPoint.
just throwing that I was, I guess what took me by surprise, to be very honest,
Yeah.
is we as a committee are investing, again, more significant time.
Yeah. This is what we signed up for.
Okay, and while I hear that.
Yeah.
And while I acknowledge that, I'm not sure that we should keep investing substantive chunks of our time unless we know that this project has viability.
That's a good
And I
point.
hate to verbalize that,
No,
but
it's a good
I
point.
think it's a
Valid.
very realistic concern.
It's valid.
Well, also, in wanting to be neutral, would it be a bad idea to do something like that? Actually?
What do you mean, just having a deck in general?
No, having like a presentation where we provide, I mean, as opposed to educational, is it more promotional, is my question. And I guess if we're more promotional, does that reflect bad on the committee? Because a few of the Board of Selectmen wanted this committee to be impartial and to be objective and,
The main question
Why not?
was, why is this good for the community? And that's what's one of the things I want to answer.
Right.
okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes
Yeah.
sense. Yeah, I just want to, I don't know, I guess
I
I'm
think
just saying
your
I want to
point
be
is very
objective
legitimate.
Yeah.
and stating that way without appearing to be too promotional, but obviously there are facts about how it's beneficial, so I support either way. I just wanted to bring that up because I'm not sure if that reflects poorly on us, if we're too much like, you know.
No, I think, I think that we've reached a stage where
Yeah.
promotional is the right move.
I
to
agree,
make.
because
Okay.
if we're not promoting it, then people will come to the
Yeah.
meeting of the Board of Selectmen and say, no, we don't want this, because they don't have the knowledge.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
Although I think that in Jim's slides, you have a promotional slant as well as a page that says, addresses directly, why do we need to talk about it?
Right.
yeah, I agree. I felt that one was more geared toward Board of Selectmen than toward public. I just want to make sure that we use different language for different audience.
Okay, that's fine. As I said, it's just that we're hearing about this, one, for the first time, but two, it's an investment of time, which I'm not sure, and you're saying you're cool with that, and I hear
That's what I
that.
signed up for.
Okay, and while I hear that, maybe I'm not articulating myself well. It's to the overarching of, is this going to go anywhere? And if we're looking, I think it goes back to the point we were discussing earlier, that if there's no possibility of this project being viable,
Yeah.
does it make sense to invest any more time than what we signed up for?
I get what you're saying, but Ron said it earlier, that's not up to us.
I hear that,
We
however,
we need to do our job, and our job is to propose the site and inform the public.
That's right, and I think that as much as anything, and I'll pull this right out of Jim's sheet, as of 3/22/17 or as of 4/27/17, 7 design grants remain available with 2 design grant applications under review.
absolutely.
And I think that, that's
That's
what we should close
we should
with.
focus with that.
Right, act or don't act, but if you don't act, you
This is
stand to
what-
lose a lot of
yeah.
money.
And it's on you.
And if
Absolutely.
we inform the public in a way that gets them excited about it, they will help us to push the town.
Yep.
Good luck.
Okay, that's fair.
I would say this, if you want to go ahead and personally make the investment of time,
Yeah.
I've got no issues with you
Absolutely.
doing
Your
so.
allocation.
Doing yourself, right? I would say though, I think, we should, and we can use what you put together as a starting point, but I think before we get into a public meeting and share anything, we should probably agree to what's a good place to go and what's a good place to stay away from based on what we can't say for sure, or can't answer, or we're not in the position to answer. So to me, elaborating on this in such a way that either we're providing more data or we're providing, putting in a nice video or something, or being creative. I mean,
It's the safe zone.
yeah, if we want to talk about the specifics of, a slide or two on what the Standard Foundation grant is, but obviously, when they get into some people are going to pick it up on it, right? They're going to see the numbers and say, all right, where's 25 grand coming from? But there's going to be certain things that we're going to have to just agree to that we can't answer that right now.
Yep.
Under
Of course.
consideration, thanks for the input, but,
course.
that type
Yeah.
of stuff, so.
We will come back with answers to your questions.
Correct.
And I think I would also say, right, I think whatever we do to communicate that meeting
that we call that out in kind of the, the meeting, overview, if you want to call it, because I felt like, in some of these past, board meetings, is that people came in not necessarily aligned with what, people were hoping for. And I can't say for sure, but I do know that we can kind of help ourselves by saying, this is what it is, and this is what it's not, right? And being very clear and, on the upfront communication with respect to this, whatever we're going to call it, and then, go with whatever we go.
And I know something that I believe we talked about at the last meeting, Jim, was a timeline about the steps we've taken as a committee to prove our due diligence and our thoroughness, that things are completed by certain tasks, that we did an overview of how many sites, and we met with so-and-so on such and such a date. And a second PowerPoint was devised, and a third PowerPoint was devised, and a pamphlet, and I think demonstrating the excessive amount of time we've invested in this, which exceeds any reasonable expectation or the scope of what we were given.
Agreed.
We talked about this, yes?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think for both, it's a slide that I started on, but if we want to elaborate on it in some way, I think it's a slide that works for both the Board of Selectmen as well as the public, because people are going to say, well, how did you come up with this? Okay, and we got to be able to educate on our process.
Well, kind of what I was going to was there were 3 speakers at the COO meeting, the one we were at, that said, you've invested how many hours in this? Well, we're volunteers. We're not getting paid. So this isn't your tax dollars being wasted. It's our time, hopefully going to a good purpose. And I think that's a key delineation.
So I'm good with what we're saying. I don't know if we need to vote on this piece. This to me is tactical. Okay. So if we want to just get this one off the table, and someone wants to make a motion on this, then I would say that I'm good with that. Everyone else is good. Just close the book on this piece of it.
Okay. So the plan is you're gonna go home, finalize the flyer.
Sure.
Write the letter. Yeah?
Okay.
Again, tasks we didn't know about.
I swear we discussed this.
Yes, we did talk about writing the letter. I can write the letter, that's
Okay,
fine.
thank you.
No problem.
And I will make the deck. Mr. Chair, you're going to book the 27th for the forum. You shaking your head at me?
Huh?
You're shaking your head?
I'm looking at the growing list of tasks that you guys are signing up for, and I'm just in awe.
See, I don't know why you'd need a new deck, because I think we have a deck.
Okay, I'm gonna work with.
I don't know,
I wanna make sure. So I'm gonna look at the one you
Jim
made.
spent all sorts of hours on that deck.
Let her go.
I spent a few
Let her go.
few hours.
I'm gonna look at what you made.
Rearranging things on the
really
deck.
wanna make sure. That's all.
Let her go.
If you feel a compelling urge, you go with what feels right.
And we're gonna do the forum on the 20th. So we meet 1 week, 2 weeks?
Well, our regular night would be the 5th, right?
That's next week.
Next. Okay.
Right?
Yes.
Is that too?
I know. I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
We know the room is available
And then
that night, and that would leave us one more
so
regular meeting
at that point
night
we can approve
before.
the final
Right.
flyer and approve the letter
I'll bring the letter.
and deck. And then we can go from there for how we're going to disperse information about the forum. Okay? Anything else for the plan?
I think
You
there.
got 2 more meetings, so.
Yeah.
No, I know. I just want to make sure that
Yeah.
there weren't anything else people wanted to discuss for next week about other concerns with the timeline and things like that.
Well, no, like I said, I believe this is one thread,
Yeah.
right? Is we need to do something with this. If we invest another 2 weeks and 4 weeks into it, we should have some answers on some other things that are going to help us determine the future.
The rest, you're absolutely right. The rest of our task, which is mainly to go to existing town bodies, is going to depend on the reaction at the 27th.
Correct.
I mean, you're not gonna come to the selectmen and say, well, we had a meeting and 150 people showed up and 149 of them said they don't want it there. Oh, we're in real trouble, we might as well not even go to the selectmen at that point.
Are we doing? have
Hopefully, we're gonna
tentative
say a very solid majority expressed a willingness to have a dog park there.
date? Do we have a date for the selectmen, maybe?
Not yet.
I
It
would-
depend on,
I'd rather wait till after the
27.
forum, yeah, because if we come back from the forum and hear a lot of concerns that we haven't thought
We're
about.
getting into what is a terrible, busy season town-wide. You've got a town meeting, you've got a town election, both coming up first
in May,
3 weeks in May, yeah. So
I mean, if we can,
they're gonna be,
if we get back from the forum and hear concerns we haven't thought about, I want to be able to address those
you wanna be able to address
before we
them,
go to
right?
selectmen.
Right.
I agree.
So that will, ironically, get us after the election, so.
Okay.
So you will have the Board of Selectmen then, who will be actually voting on submitting the grant, and will be voting on whatever funds might be needed or not needed, whether or not to accept the aid from the Fur Friends,
Yeah.
a lot of things.
And that seats up, isn't it only a certain?
There are 2 seats up out of the 5-member board. One person is not running for re-election, as I hear.
So I understand that there is one candidate running, who is a new candidate, who's never been a selectman before.
You may want some time to go out and campaign on street corners.
Thinking like,
That might be the most effective way.
Well, you know, we
To get
can write
this
in
brought to-
candidates.
Yeah.
All right. Anything
All right, so in summary, we're working on that. You're gonna find out whether that, to just double check that the date that we see there is accurate. We're interpreting what we see correct.
yeah,
And you're also going to determine, try to get a sense of the willingness from the town to get a meeting with Fur Friends as soon as possible to start, trying to get some answers.
yeah.
So go be the part of like Switzerland.
Nice. Nice. That was nice. Like that. I like
Switzerland doesn't do anything. They don't take part. That's how they stay neutral.
That's why I suggested that country. Go be neutral. That's exactly why I
Right.
that. Go
suggested
be
it.
neutral.
Go
Okay.
be none.
And you'll book the 27th.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
At 7.
Seven
That's a
seven
more
works. It's a
appropriate
more,
hour
it's a
for
more,
public
yeah,
problem.
working parent hour. Yep.
Mhm.
Move to adjourn?
A second.
Moved and seconded, we adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved.